The Miller house sat on a quiet cul-de-sac, where lawns were trimmed to regulation height and mailboxes stood like loyal sentinels. To anyone driving past, the place radiated stability. There was the two-car garage, one side filled by a sensible SUV, the other by a slightly sportier sedan Michael Miller had justified as his midlife indulgence. There was the white siding, freshly power-washed, and the neat rows of tulips that his wife, Anna, planted every spring. Evenings, when the neighborhood lights blinked on, the Miller home glowed warmly, as if to confirm that everything inside was just as harmonious as the exterior suggested. But like most facades, the glow concealed more than it revealed. Michael, 48, wore his success like an uncomfortable suit. By day he was a senior project manager for a construction firm that specialized in commercial complexes, a job that paid well enough to keep the mortgage and college funds intact. Yet he often came home looking hollowed out, as if the endless meetings and the subtle corporate betrayals had worn down not just his patience but something deeper, his sense of purpose. In conversations, he defaulted to weather or sports scores, safe topics that kept him from slipping into the raw truth. He was tired, not just of work but of the quiet disconnection waiting at home. Anna, 45, was the family's social architect. She coordinated school fundraisers, organized block parties, and maintained the illusion that the Millers were a family worth aspiring to. Friends admired her as put together, the kind of suburban matriarch who could whip up a three-course meal and still look effortlessly stylish. Inside, though, Anna felt a private erosion. Her marriage had settled into politeness rather than intimacy. The energy she poured into keeping appearances left her wondering, in rare unguarded moments, if anyone actually saw her beyond the role she played. Their two children embodied the illusion as well. Emily, 17, had the glossy hair and grade point average to fit the image of a thriving suburban teen, though lately she'd become more adept at hiding her true moods. Nights were often spent behind a closed bedroom door, earbuds in, her laughter reserved for friends' group chats rather than family dinners. Daniel, 13, was the household's comic relief, full of sarcastic remarks and restless energy. His teachers admired his wit, but beneath the humor was a simmering unease he didn't know how to express except through mischief. The cracks in the Miller family weren't dramatic, no screaming fights that echoed through the cul-de-sac, no police calls in the middle of the night. Their erosion was subtler, like hairline fractures in plaster that only reveal themselves under certain light. A silence at the dinner table that stretched just a little too long. A glance exchanged between Michael and Anna that carried the weight of something unsaid. Emily withdrawing further into her online world, Daniel sensing the distance but translating it into restless rebellion. The facade held, but only just. Evenings were the truest test. Dinner was served at 7, though increasingly it was less a family gathering than a ritual performance. Michael would recount a sanitized version of his day, Anna would nod, Emily would push food around her plate, and Daniel would crack a joke sharp enough to earn a brief laugh before the silence returned. Afterward, everyone retreated. Michael to the TV, Anna to her laptop where she managed neighborhood committees, Emily to her room, Daniel to video games. 4 separate lives orbiting the same address. On weekends, the dissonance sharpened. Anna insisted on family outings, apple picking in the fall, Sunday services even when Michael claimed exhaustion, picnics at the lake once spring returned. The pictures she posted on Facebook painted a portrait of familial joy. Michael's arm around her waist, Emily smiling into the camera, Daniel making goofy faces. Likes and comments rolled in, "What a beautiful family," but Anna sometimes stared at the screen afterward with a hollow ache. She couldn't decide whether the digital praise made the reality easier to bear or harder. Michael, for his part, tried to convince himself that the distance was just the natural evolution of marriage. Passion cooled, teenagers withdrew, life became a series of obligations. It was what adulthood meant, wasn't it? But sometimes, late at night when the house was quiet, he would recall the early years with Anna, the laughter, the reckless road trips, the way she once looked at him as if he were the axis of her world. The memory was both comforting and cruel, a reminder of what had been and what was no longer. For Emily, the facade was suffocating. At school, she excelled, honors classes, student council, a resume already polished for college applications. But the weight of expectation pressed hard. Her friends talked about escaping to universities far away, new lives unbound from family routines. Emily craved that too, though she hadn't admitted it aloud. In the meantime, she perfected the art of distance, nodding at parental questions without revealing anything of her inner life. The unspoken truth was that she no longer saw her parents as confidants but as obstacles to endure until freedom arrived. Daniel, younger and less practiced at concealment, rebelled in small ways. He let chores slide, mouthed off to teachers, tested the boundaries at home with sarcasm and defiance. His parents dismissed it as typical teenage boy behavior, but beneath the jokes Daniel sensed the tremors in his family. He wasn't old enough to articulate it, but he felt it in the air, the way his parents rarely touched, the brittle silence that followed arguments behind closed doors, the absence of laughter that once filled the kitchen. Humor was his armor, but even he sometimes went to bed with a knot in his chest he didn't understand. The facade of suburban success was maintained not by malice but by inertia. Each family member, in their own way, colluded in the performance. It was easier to play their roles than to confront what lay beneath. But like all performances, it demanded constant energy, and the Millers were beginning to tire. One autumn evening, as leaves drifted across the cul-de-sac, Anna stood at the kitchen sink watching her neighbors. The Stevens family next door was raking leaves together, laughing as their youngest buried himself in the pile. The sight stirred something sharp in her chest, not envy exactly, but recognition of what she and Michael had lost. Behind her, Michael clicked through TV channels, Daniel's laughter echoed from his room, and Emily's door remained shut. The house felt full and empty at once. Anna dried her hands and turned toward the living room. For a moment she considered sitting beside Michael, starting a real conversation, maybe even touching his arm. But the weight of years and unspoken disappointments held her in place. Instead, she walked upstairs to fold laundry, another small act in the endless choreography of family life. The facade held another night, but hairline cracks were spreading, and sooner or later, something would give. The revelation did not come as a thunderclap but as a faint, accidental sound, the kind of noise you almost dismiss before realizing it changes everything. It began on a Wednesday evening, when Anna decided to tidy the hall closet. She was hunting for a misplaced pair of gloves when she discovered an old shoebox tucked behind board games the kids hadn't touched in years. Inside were random papers, tax forms, receipts, the sort of mess Michael was forever stuffing away instead of filing properly. She almost tossed it all into the recycling. But one envelope had slipped open, and a photograph slid out. It was the kind of picture families used to develop at drugstores, glossy, with the faint chemical scent of the late 2000s. The photo showed Michael, younger, a touch thinner, with the same awkward half-smile he wore in their own wedding album. But beside him was a boy, no older than 6 or 7. The resemblance was unnerving. The boy's dark eyes, the slant of his nose. Michael's features, reduced and distilled. On the back, in smudged pen, Liam, summer 2011. Anna stared at the name until her vision blurred. She tried to breathe, but the air seemed too thick. She felt as though she'd stumbled into someone else's life, someone else's marriage. That night at dinner, the photograph lay face down beneath her napkin. She could hardly taste the roasted chicken she'd spent an hour preparing. Emily, silent as usual, picked at her green beans. Daniel made sarcastic comments about homework and basketball practice. Michael, tired from his commute, muttered responses without lifting his eyes from his plate. It could have been any ordinary night. But Anna's chest pounded. She was waiting for the moment she would turn the photo over, slide it onto the table, and watch their fragile routines collapse. It happened sooner than she expected. Daniel, mid-rant about a math teacher, knocked his water glass. The spill spread across the table, creeping toward her napkin. She snatched it up, too quickly, and the photograph slipped free. "What's that?" Daniel asked, before Anna could hide it. Emily, ever observant, reached faster. She flipped it over and froze. The silence that followed was not the usual Miller family silence, the comfortable background hush of a household where people lived parallel lives. This silence was charged, jagged. Emily's hand trembled as she pushed the photo toward her father. "Dad," she said, her voice sharp with something between accusation and fear. "Who is this?" Michael's fork stopped midair. He stared at the boy's face. A flash of recognition, panic, then calculation crossed his features, too quickly for him to mask. It's an old friend's kid," he said, the words stumbling out. "No," Emily said, shaking her head. "He looks like you." Daniel leaned in, frowning. "Wait, he actually does. Same nose, same ears." Anna hadn't spoken yet. She wanted to give Michael the chance, wanted him to meet her eyes, to offer an explanation that made sense. But he kept looking at the photo, then down at his plate, as though denial might still rescue him. Finally, she said it. "Michael." Who was Liam? The sound of the name, she had given it voice, seemed to drain the room of oxygen. Daniel's mouth fell open. Emily's eyes widened. Michael set down his fork. He wiped his hands on his napkin, stalling. "It's complicated," he said quietly. "Complicated?" Anna's laugh came out brittle. "You have a child? Another child? And that's complicated?" The children recoiled, their eyes darting between their parents as if caught in crossfire. Daniel blurted, "Wait, does this mean we have a brother?" Emily's voice was colder. "Or does it mean Dad lied to us our whole lives?" Michael pressed his palms together, leaning forward. I didn't lie. I thought it was better not to." "Not to what?" Anna snapped. "Not to tell your wife? Your children? Not to admit that you abandoned a boy?" Michael closed his eyes. "I was young. Before I met you, Anna. I was with someone. It didn't last." She moved away. "I tried, at first, but she didn't want me involved. She said it would only confuse him. And then, life kept moving. We got married, we had Emily, then Daniel. I told myself it was in the past. But he's not in the past," Anna whispered. "He's a person. He's your son." The kitchen clock ticked. The chicken cooled, untouched. Daniel's leg jiggled under the table. Emily crossed her arms, retreating into herself. The words hung heavy. Abandoned. The kids stared at him as though seeing him for the first time. Michael looked at each of them, desperation flickering in his eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you. Any of you. I thought I was protecting us." Emily's voice cracked. "Protecting us from what? From the truth?" Daniel shoved his chair back, the legs screeching against tile. "This is messed up. We're messed up." He stomped down the hall, his bedroom door slamming shut moments later. Anna pressed her hands to her temples. "Do you know anything about him now? Where he is? How old? What he likes? Or did you just bury him, Michael, along with every ounce of honesty you owed us?" Michael swallowed hard. "I don't know where he is now. We lost touch. He faltered. "I tried to reach out a few years ago. No response." Anna shook her head. She had no words left, only the raw ache of betrayal, a wound that seemed to spread outward, infecting the children, the walls, the very air they breathed. Emily rose slowly, her chair scraping. She gathered her plate, dumped the food untouched into the trash, and retreated to her room without a word. That left only Anna and Michael at the table, the photograph lying between them like a shard of glass. "You should have told me," Anna said finally, her voice flat. "You should have told us." Michael nodded, eyes fixed on the photo. "I know." And that was the beginning of the fracture, the moment when everything that had seemed solid in the Miller household revealed itself to be glass, transparent, brittle, and already splintering. The photograph lay forgotten on the mantelpiece, though no one in the Miller house could truly forget it. Its presence hovered, invisible yet insistent, like the hum of an appliance you can't quite locate. Every conversation, every glance across the dinner table, seemed charged with the static of that boy's face. Liam, with Michael's eyes, Michael's jawline. The house itself seemed to respond. The HVAC unit groaned louder than usual. Floorboards creaked underfoot like they were straining to hold a weight. Even the dog, Maisie, sensed the change, pacing more, settling less. Michael had always thought of himself as pragmatic. Problems were for solving. Budgets to balance, deadlines to meet, children to discipline. But this wasn't solvable, not in the sense he understood. He had imagined, naively, that burying his past was equivalent to erasing it. That if he avoided speaking Liam's name, the boy would somehow become unreal. Now reality had come crashing in, the way it always does when denial runs out of oxygen. Michael woke in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, staring at the ceiling fan tracing slow circles above him. He replayed the choices of his 20s. The brief relationship, the fear of responsibility, the cowardice that had led him to distance himself. He told himself he had been young, ill-equipped. But even in the silence of 3 a.m., excuses tasted like ash. He wanted to explain himself to Anna, to Emily, to Daniel. But every time he tried, the words congealed. How do you tell your family that their very existence is built on a selective truth? Anna's anger was a steady, low flame. She did not scream. She did not throw dishes. She simply withdrew, a little more each day. Mornings became silent rituals. Pouring cereal, checking her phone, avoiding Michael's gaze. When she did speak, her words were clipped, professional, like emails from an office manager. What unsettled her most was not the betrayal itself but the length of it. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of meals and holidays and shared bank accounts, and all the while, Michael had carried this other life like a locked drawer. She kept thinking of the photograph, of the boy's shy half-smile, and of the possibility that Liam had sat somewhere on Christmas mornings without his father, while her children unwrapped gifts by the tree. She wanted to hate Michael, but hate felt too active, too exhausting. What she felt was hollowness, a cavity in her chest. She found herself scrolling Zillow listings late at night, not seriously planning to leave but comforted by the fantasy of escape. Emily reacted in the way teenagers often do, with a strange mix of silence and eruption. At school, she was withdrawn, her grades slipping. Teachers noted her distraction, her blank stares during lectures. At home, she oscillated between icy detachment and sudden flare-ups. One evening, as Michael tried to ask about her homework, she snapped. "Why should I listen to you? You lied to all of us for years. You're supposed to be the example, Dad." Her words sliced through him. He stood frozen, holding the back of a chair for balance. Emily stormed upstairs, the slam of her door reverberating through the house like a gavel. In her room, Emily lay curled on the bed, earbuds in, music blasting. What unnerved her wasn't just her father's secret but the collapse of the story she'd told herself about her family, that they were solid, reliable, immune to the dysfunctions she saw in her classmates' lives. She realized with a pang that maybe everyone's family was a facade. Daniel, the youngest, processed things differently. He masked his confusion with sarcasm, testing boundaries with sharper jokes at the dinner table. But sometimes, late at night, Anna heard him crying softly in his room. He didn't know what to make of Liam. Did having another brother, one who lived elsewhere, one who wasn't acknowledged, diminish his place in the family? He asked his mother once, in a rare moment of vulnerability, "Does Dad love him more than me?" Anna had swallowed hard, pulling Daniel close, telling him love wasn't a competition. But even as she said it, she wondered how true it was. Family dinners, once routine, became tense affairs. Forks scraped plates. Conversation was perfunctory. On one particular night, Anna set down a casserole, the kind she used to make without thinking. Michael offered to pour water for everyone, a small olive branch. Emily pushed her food around with her fork. Daniel made a joke about half-siblings that landed like a brick. Silence followed. Then Anna, her voice low but firm, spoke. "We can't keep living like this." Pretending. Michael looked at her, at the children. His throat tightened. "I know," he said. I'll reach out to Liam. I should have years ago. I'll take responsibility." The words hung in the air, fragile. Emily rolled her eyes but said nothing. Daniel stared at his plate. Anna nodded, though whether in agreement or resignation was unclear. Weeks passed in this limbo. Michael drafted emails to Liam's mother but deleted them before sending. He drove aimlessly after work, circling neighborhoods, rehearsing conversations in his head. At home, he found himself studying Emily's furrowed brow, Daniel's restless energy, Anna's weary silence. He realized, with a pang, that his secret had not only fractured his marriage but reshaped his children's understanding of trust. Anna began attending a book club again, her small rebellion of independence. She lingered afterward, chatting with friends, savoring the hours away from the house. Michael suspected she was testing what it might feel like to have a life without him. Emily spent more time at the library, ostensibly studying but often just scrolling her phone in the back corner. Daniel buried himself in video games, his headset a shield against the world. The house was full of people, yet it felt abandoned. One late evening, Michael found himself in the kitchen, nursing a glass of water, staring at the sink. Anna entered, carrying a load of laundry. Their eyes met. For the first time in weeks, neither looked away. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Anna said quietly. Michael nodded. "I don't know if I deserve it." They stood in silence, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator. It wasn't reconciliation, not yet. But it was acknowledgement, a fragile bridge suspended over a chasm. Upstairs, Emily lay awake, listening to the murmur of voices below. She couldn't make out the words, only the tone, softer, less sharp than before. She closed her eyes, uncertain whether to feel relief or sorrow. Daniel, too, was awake, staring at the glow of his video game paused mid-screen. He wondered if things would ever go back to normal, though he wasn't sure what normal even meant anymore. The reckoning was not a single moment but a series of small ones, fragments of truth breaking through the surface of denial. The Millers did not collapse all at once. They splintered, then hovered in that uncertain state between fracture and repair. Every member of the family, in their own way, carried the weight of the secret. And though they did not yet know it, the real test was still ahead. Whether the truth, now exposed, could become the seed of something new, or whether it would remain the crack that grew until everything gave way. The house had grown quieter in the weeks following the revelation, but it was not a peaceful quiet. It was the kind of silence that pressed in from the walls, brittle and waiting to shatter. Words were withheld not out of courtesy but out of fear, fear that once spoken, they could never be recalled. Anna had stopped arranging the Sunday dinners that once stood as their ritual anchor. She moved through the kitchen with an efficient detachment, cooking just enough for each night, setting plates down without flourish. Sometimes she left Michael's dish covered on the counter if he worked late. The table became an accident of presence. Who arrived, who lingered, who fled upstairs as soon as the fork scraped the last bite. The children felt it acutely. Emily's grades slipped further, though she kept insisting to her mother that she didn't care. Daniel adopted a biting humor that made even his friends hesitate. He rolled his eyes at almost everything Michael said, as though instinctively defending his mother by refusing his father the dignity of seriousness. And Michael, he tried to patch the silences with practicalities. He offered rides, asked about homework, mentioned weekend projects. Each attempt thudded against the wall Anna had erected, invisible yet immovable. His guilt sat behind his ribs like a lodged stone. He had made a decision years ago, in a different life, believing he could seal it off. Now the seal had ruptured, and the flood carried not only his shame but also their family's fragile scaffolding. The fracture came to a head on an unremarkable Wednesday. It started with the counselor's call. Emily had skipped her last 2 classes and been found sitting in the library parking lot, staring at nothing. When Anna answered, her voice remained steady, but her hand gripped the counter so hard that her knuckles blanched. When Emily returned home, she slammed the door, stomped up the stairs, and shouted, "Don't follow me." But Anna did, knocking once before pushing open the door. Inside, Emily sat cross-legged on her bed, earbuds dangling without sound. Her eyes were red, her expression somewhere between defiance and collapse. "I'm fine," she said. "You're not fine." Anna's tone was sharper than intended. "Skipping classes? Sitting in parking lots? That's not fine." Emily shrugged. "Maybe I don't want to keep pretending like you and Dad." The sentence landed like a spark in dry grass. Anna stood frozen, the words echoing in the room, then snapped, "You don't understand what your father has done." "You don't? Then tell me," Emily shouted. "You think I don't already know? That picture? The kid? You think I'm stupid?" Anna faltered, as though slapped. Her anger, so long contained, surged forward. Your father has another child. A boy. He never told me, never told us. He thought he could bury it, and now look what it's doing to us." The words hung heavy in the small bedroom. For the first time, they were spoken plainly, not whispered between adults or inferred through silence. Emily stared, jaw tight. "So we're just supposed to act like it didn't happen? Or what, hate him forever? Is that what you want?" Anna's reply tangled in her throat. "I want you to see the truth." But Emily had already turned away, pulling her blanket up like a shield. "I see enough." That night, the confrontation spilled downstairs. Michael walked in late, weary from a day of distracted work. He set his briefcase down and immediately sensed the air. Anna stood in the kitchen, arms folded. Daniel sat at the table, pretending to do homework but listening intently. "We need to talk," Anna said flatly. Michael glanced at Daniel. "Now?" "Yes, now. The children already know, or at least enough of it. Better they hear the rest from you than from some rumor or my anger." Daniel's pencil froze mid-stroke. "What's going on?" Michael hesitated. He had rehearsed this speech in his head for weeks, but the words scattered under their stares. He stopped, exhaled. "Before your mother and I married, I was in a relationship. It ended, not cleanly. Years later, I learned she had a son. Liam, my son." Silence pressed in. Daniel blinked, processing. "So, we have a brother out there? You just forgot to mention him?" Michael winced. "It wasn't forgetting. I thought it was best to keep things stable here. I thought protecting you meant lying to us?" Emily's voice cut in from the stairs. She had descended quietly, arms crossed, face pale but steady. Michael turned toward her, pleading. "Emily, I never wanted to hurt you. But you did," she said. Her voice did not rise, but the calmness carried more weight than any shout. "You hurt all of us." Anna stepped forward, her fury controlled yet unmistakable. "Do you understand what you've done, Michael? Every day of our marriage has been built on a half-truth. Every dinner, every holiday. You watched me plan this life while you hid an entire human being." Michael's face collapsed into something raw. "I was scared. I thought if I admitted it, everything would fall apart. And now," he gestured helplessly at the room, the children's faces, the tense air. "Now it has." Daniel shoved his chair back, muttering, "This family's a joke," before storming upstairs. Emily followed silently. Anna stood across from Michael, eyes shining not with tears but with a hard clarity. "You made this choice, and now we live inside its wreckage." The days after were volatile. Daniel refused to eat at the table, carrying plates to his room. Emily oscillated between sharp retorts and withdrawn silence. Anna kept the house running with mechanical precision but spoke to Michael only when necessary. One evening, Michael tried again. He knocked on Emily's door, asked if she wanted help with an essay. She didn't look up from her desk. "You can't help me with honesty, Dad. So don't bother." Later, he attempted with Daniel, suggesting they play basketball in the driveway. Daniel laughed bitterly. "What's the point? You'll probably just leave when Liam shows up." Michael stood stunned, unable to summon defense. At night, he sat at the kitchen table long after the others had gone to bed, staring at his phone. Liam's number glowed in the contacts, unused. The boy deserved acknowledgement, but how could he reach out without detonating what little remained of this household? The fracture was not one dramatic explosion but a series of splinters radiating outward. Every interaction cracked along the fault lines. At school conferences, Anna went alone. She told Michael afterward that Emily needed stability, not more half-truths. Daniel grew sarcastic to the point of cruelty, testing how much venom a father would absorb before retaliating. And yet, beneath the rubble, threads of love still clung stubbornly. Emily left her father a cup of coffee one morning, wordless, but it was not contempt. It was a conflicted gesture, a reminder that even betrayal could not erase blood. Daniel, after railing at Michael, secretly kept his old baseball mitt on the shelf, unwilling to throw it out. The fracture was not a clean break. It was messy, jagged, filled with both anger and the stubborn refusal to let go completely. One Sunday, as the sun dipped behind the neighborhood rooftops, Anna gathered the children in the living room. Michael entered hesitantly, unsure if he was included. Anna's voice was even. "We can't keep living in silence. This family has broken open, yes. But it's still ours. I don't know what the future looks like, or how we rebuild, but pretending nothing happened will kill us faster than the truth already has." She looked at Michael, not forgiving, not even softening, but acknowledging his presence. "You need to decide how to be a father now. To all of them, including the one you abandoned." Michael swallowed hard. For once, no defense came. Only the weight of choice, heavier than any he had carried before. The room was quiet, each member suspended in uncertainty. The fracture had revealed itself fully, raw, undeniable, impossible to ignore. Whether it would widen into collapse or serve as the painful beginning of something rebuilt, none of them yet knew. The Miller house had grown quieter in the weeks after the photograph detonated through their lives. Silence had become its own language. In the pauses before answering, in the careful footsteps on the stairs, in the way Anna closed cupboards without slamming them. What was said was less important than what remained unsaid. Still, beneath the stillness, something else, tentative, brittle, began to stir. Michael, for his part, tried to act as if a routine could tether them. He woke early, made coffee, drove to work. Yet the weight of Liam's existence pressed on him in every meeting, every idle conversation. The truth no longer hid, it followed him, reshaping who he was not only to his wife and children, but to himself. For years, he had imagined fatherhood as one clean, continuous line. Now he knew it was fractured, doubled, flawed, and still demanding. Anna had not left. Some nights she considered it, rehearsing the steps, packing a suitcase, explaining to the children, calling her sister in Chicago. But each morning she found herself still in the kitchen, buttering toast, measuring out cereal. Habit carried her, but habit was also choice. She could not name what bound her: fear, loyalty, exhaustion, or the faint possibility that truth, however late, was better than lies. Emily retreated behind books and her phone, her headphones a kind of barricade. She no longer asked her parents for help with homework. At dinner she answered in monosyllables, if at all. Yet one evening, Michael noticed her quietly rinsing dishes after a meal, unprompted. The gesture was small, but he felt it like a crack letting in light. She had not forgiven him, perhaps never would, but she remained in orbit. Distance, yes, but not escape. Daniel was louder in his hurt. Sarcasm became his weapon, jokes flung like stones. "Hey Dad," he'd mutter, "planning any more secret families?" Sometimes his cruelty left Michael speechless, but Anna, oddly, never rebuked him. She seemed to accept that anger was his way of loving, that at least he still demanded something, even if only accountability. And then came Liam, not in some dramatic confrontation, but in the simplest way: a Saturday visit. Michael had arranged it haltingly, unsure whether Anna would forbid it, unsure whether his children would face him. Yet when Liam, a boy of 12, with Michael's same dark eyes, stood in the doorway, the family did not collapse. They looked, they measured, they endured. Anna extended a hand, polite, formal. Emily lingered in the background, gaze sharp but not hostile. Daniel scowled, arms folded, then stomped upstairs. It was imperfect, strained, awkward. But it was real. For the first time, the ghost of Michael's past was not a ghost but a boy, breathing, shuffling his sneakers on the rug. They did not call it forgiveness. They did not call it healing. It was only presence. And presence, however uneasy, was more than silence. The weeks that followed were uneven. Some days were heavy with arguments, doors shut, dinners abandoned. Other days held odd, fragile intimacies. Michael showing Daniel how to replace a bike chain. Anna and Emily folding laundry together, not speaking but not fleeing either. Liam sitting at the table while Anna sliced apples, her movements mechanical, yet steady. Spring crept into the valley. Snow melted from the gutters, grass appeared in muddy patches, the air carried birdsong again. One evening, Anna opened a window and let the breeze in. Michael, returning from work, paused at the sight. Something about the ordinary gesture, the window unlocked, air circulating, felt like a verdict softer than words, not acceptance, not even agreement, but permission to breathe again. They gathered, finally, around a meal that was neither holiday nor performance. Just a Wednesday. Pasta, salad, bread. The table was crowded. Emily quiet, Daniel restless, Liam shy, Anna weary, Michael tentative. No speeches were made. Conversation stumbled, circled, found occasional footholds. At one point Daniel made a joke, sharp, but less poisonous than before, and even Anna's mouth twitched, against her will, toward a smile. Michael watched them, all of them, and understood that love was not purity, not the neat picture they had once presented to neighbors. Love was persistence, the refusal to abandon. It was Anna still setting the table. It was Emily still sitting down. It was Daniel's joke. It was Liam's cautious glance, testing whether he belonged. The fractures remained. They might never vanish. Yet through the cracks, light entered. Later that night, after dishes were stacked and children dispersed, Michael found Anna in the kitchen. She was wiping crumbs from the counter. He stood, uncertain, before saying, "Thank you. For tonight." She did not look up. "It's not forgiveness," she said. "I know." Silence stretched, but it was not hostile. Finally she added, "It's survival. And maybe that's enough." Michael nodded. He wanted to reach for her hand but did not. Instead, he let the moment be what it was, fragile, imperfect, alive. Outside, spring rain began to fall, soft against the windows. In the darkened rooms of the house, children slept uneasily, each carrying their own confusions, their own bruised hopes. The family was not whole, not healed. But it endured. And endurance, Michael thought as he turned off the kitchen light, was its own kind of love.